Right. That should be fine. Okay. I'm just waiting for the go ahead from my team before I begin asking you questions and so on. Welcome to the Longshore, a podcast where we engage in open-ended conversations about international education with future applicants, current students, alumni, and other stakeholders. I'm Yash, the CEO of Longshore Education and your host today. Our guest today is Anmol Doss, a mechanical engineering student at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. He has completed 2 years of his bachelor's degree and is studying on a significant scholarship. In this episode, we talk about his educational journey from pursuing an IB diploma in high school to his experiences as an international student in the United States. We cover a wide range of topics, including the flexibility of the American curriculum, unexpected aspects of American culture, differences in teaching styles for engineering, and much more. Anmol also shares insights on taking initiative while looking for internships and making the most of your academic experience. Join us for my conversation with Anmol. Welcome, Anmol. How are you doing?
Thanks, Yash. I'm doing well today, and thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it. And remember when I was going through the process, and you were really helpful with helping me send in applications and encouraging me to apply to a lot of places. And I certainly don't regret that now. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure to help. I think the first question that I did have in mind was that how much of a role did you have in deciding to pursue the International Baccalaureate? Is that something that your parents said on your behalf because of their own international experience? Or was that something that you actively sought out?
Well, right. So I will say that basically from first grade, I was in an international school in Bangalore. Right. So I was in that school because I realized that was when I was younger, I was not very good at some of the things that memorizing and some of the stuff that was pretty important in the traditional schools. My parents found that I was really more at home in international school. So, by the time I got to 10th grade, the choice was kind of at hand when I was graduating 10th grade that, okay, now it makes sense. I'm in an international school. Either I can do GCSE or ASE levels or do IB, right? And I kind of like that because I'm more of an application-based learner. I just don't learn things by rote. I can't do it. So I thought about between the ASE 11 and IB, and I really love doing. And IB has this methodology of everything it's a lot about projects. Like there's exams are a big deal, but you have what are called the internal assessments, the extended essay, and all these other classes. It's a very holistic education. It's like you're studying theory of knowledge, which is like a philosophy class basically in the middle of it, and then you're trying to write a 20-page paper in one of your classes, and then 15-page papers in another 5 classes. And it's really cool. So I thought that, it's a lot of work, but I feel like I would really learn a lot if I went through with this. And in a sense, it was just a challenge. It was like, hey, if I can prove to myself and my parents and my teachers and whatnot that, I can do this, that would be pretty cool. So, I decided to go down IB, and I thought it was doable because I'd spoken to other students who've done IB, and I said, hey, this seems like it's unique. It's not sort of the education and when it comes to high school. I thought it was unique. And so that's why I chose to go down the IB path. And that kind of led me towards an international education. That said, that was definitely my dad. I'll give him the credit for wanting me to go abroad. He was the one who said, you should try, And of course, I had to put in the effort and I had to get my grades and I had to write the essays and submit the application, everything. But he was the one who started it all and said, you should try this. There's something you'll get from the education abroad that you may not hear. And we can definitely talk about that.
Yeah, of course. So you did quite well in IB as well. In India are not used to the writing aspects of the curriculum. And that is a struggle when, let's say, from CBSE or even ICSE for that matter, or especially state boards as well. When you come to the US, where you have a lot of writing in the curriculum at the very outset. So, how did, I'm sure that was something that has prepared you well for an American undergraduate career.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think in general, IB is kind of geared towards that, right? It's much more like the university systems abroad. and the US is certainly no exception. But, yes, the writing aspect of IB is the biggest deterrent to a lot of people, I feel like today, because it's just like you see how many essays and how many words you're writing in each subject, and it's like it's insane. But it's just, I saw it as a challenge. And also, I feel like if you understand something truly, people have, a lot of like famous scientists like this, if you understand something truly, you should be able to explain it to someone else who has no background, essentially, right? And that's all it is. You're explaining, like when you're talking about your internal assessment in physics, chemistry, and math, you're going into a topic, you're doing research into it. And I love doing research. That's the one thing. IB has a lot of research. I would say even more than the writing is the research aspect, because the writing is what you see. You see the words in the paper. But the research that goes into it is like 3 or 4 times the amount of time expenditure. And these are skills that you need in life anyway. I want to go into research and development in the biomedical field, right? That is something. Research is a big deal, and research writing is super important. If you learn these skills early on in high school, it will do you well much later in life, I think. And so starting with like 10th grade, believe it or not, I don't think I was even close to like the best writer in my class in 10th grade. But between like the first and second year of IB, by the time I finished IB, my writing skill had just improved so much, because it's just a question of practice. Keep practicing, keep writing stuff, look at text, analyze it. I had teachers who were really great. So they really encouraged us to apply what we're learning. It's not like I came into it being the best writer ever, but I feel like I came out of it being a much better writer than I was before. I learned everything in between. I wouldn't say, it's just like if you're willing to take yourself up to the challenge, I think anyone can really get there. It's more a question of the amount of effort. And of course, everyone has different interests. I'm not saying that IB is for absolutely everyone, but I think I really like the learning methodology. I think it encourages you to find more meaning in what you're actually studying, rather than just think of it as, okay, let's get this done, let's get some marks and get out of here.
And that is something that is very different from, let's say, the rote memorization or the perhaps shallow understanding of concepts that is there in some of the other curriculum that is available to Indian students. So you started your undergraduate career in 2022, and right in the fall of that is when this most dynamic leap in artificial intelligence happened, which is the large language models becoming available. Has there been an impact in the teaching methodologies, the classroom, at the ground level, where the students and professors, how are they dealing with the advent of ChatGPT and its brethren of Gemini and Cloud? So
that's a very interesting question, because it is of course very, very recent. I remember when ChatGPT first came up, and I had friends showing me, hey, there's this like bot that can write your code. If you tell it to write this and it's right code, I'm like, what? I don't believe you. But now it's here, and everyone's like, yeah, ChatGPT is a thing. But I think where we stand right now is, especially in classrooms and even in universities, I don't think people know how to fully make use of it yet. We're still wrapping our heads around it. It's there, the technology exists, but what to do with it, we are kind of still figuring it out. Because the first thing that happened is, of course, professors are thinking about, oh, what about plagiarism? People just type in a prompt and they get an essay and they throw it into your thing. So the first step was, ban AI from writing your essay. But then since now it's been like, 2 years almost. And I think people have started to get a better understanding that, hey, this is not like, it's not just for plagiarism. There's a lot of useful things that AI can do. You can, for summarizing so many things to help you, like even for writing code, I've used it to write code. It can be a useful tool, but we're still kind of figuring out how to use it in a way that's not, because of course you don't want the AI to just be like sort of this way to escape writing. Like that's not gonna end well for everyone in general. If we all stop writing and just say, give it to AI and ask it to, give it prompts and ask it to give us just entire pieces of text. But there's a lot of useful things to do with it, I think, like with coding, just generating ideas, sometimes just before you start research. Of course, it's not a substitute to doing research, asking an AI, but asking an AI, if you write your prompts correctly, you can get some pointers or something from the AI. And it can help you, I think, especially in the start of the process. Universities are still figuring this out. I think it'll look very different even 2-3 years from now than it does right now, because we're still in that absolute beginning phase.
Absolutely. So regarding research, as you mentioned, that you are interested in biomedical research, is there devices that you want to get into, considering your mechanical engineering background, or is it even something different? Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Right. So it's more on the devices side. So I kind of want to get into design of prosthetics and rehabilitation devices. So more of a mechanical engineering perspective. And the one reason for that is, the main reason as well, the research that goes on my campus. It's just, those are the opportunities to me that are the most exciting. And I've always wanted, I don't want to create I think a lot of people say this, but I don't want to just help the rich get richer. I don't see any value in that. I see the point of, how can I use what talents I have to actually help the population of the earth, help a lot of people out there. And this is the way I think that I could make some impact. And New Jersey has a pretty big, biotech scene compared to some of the other states. There's a lot of companies hiring biotech. I'm part of a research lab where we work with exoskeletons, things that are used by spinal cord injured patients to help them walk.
This is based at NJIT or
Yes.
an affiliated lab?
This is a research lab at my university. So that's another nice thing about the American education system, that the ability you have to get involved with professors doing cutting edge research is pretty cool. And so this is one such lab that I'm part of, where, we test exoskeletons and we do simulations. I'm working more on the simulation side. And I think it's super exciting. So that's the direction I want to take my career in.
So from a core mechanical engineering background, you're working, on something which is perhaps biomechanics, a little bit of biology, physiology, kinesiology, those kind of things, and, their impact and their sort of intersection of these fields. Do you think the American education system, with its emphasis on like flexibility, where you have the ability to, combine majors, minors, take classes from various curriculums, where you have a bachelor's degree of 4 years, where you will be studying, half of it is mechanical engineering, a little bit of it is general education, and a little bit of it has free electives. So that aspect of being able to have that flexibility from the very beginning to mix and match your courses, perhaps even switch to a completely different, like let's say you decide that maybe biomedical engineering specifically is what you want to go for, a couple of semesters down the line, that is something that is an option, or even doing a master's in a completely different field is an option. So the American education system does have that flexibility to make sure that student who does not know exactly where they want to go with their education has ways of pursuing that. So how do you feel that has sort of impacted your learning? I mean, you had the international background from the very beginning, so it is more of a seamless transition towards a more flexible, understanding-oriented pedagogy versus something which is, on memorization and so on. A lot of research, a lot of writing, a lot of flexibility.
The buzzword around here is interdisciplinary. Right? That's the big buzzword. I think even when I was applying to college, there was this big word that came up everywhere. Everyone was like, we need to have interdisciplinary education. I think the US has succeeded in that, generally speaking. There's a lot of different unis. You have, compared to most other countries actually in the world, in the US, you really have this flexibility that 2 years into your program, you can switch your major. Potentially, depending on from what to what you're switching, you might even be able to graduate in 4 years if you play your cards right, which is pretty crazy. That's like entirely half your degree. But yes, you do have, and you're encouraged to actually explore what is the intersection between a lot of different fields, right? Really, in my area of, let's call it biomechanics, right, which is the side of biomedical things that I'm interested in. It's an intersection of biology and mechanical, and that's kind of what biomedical engineering aims to do. But you have a lot of different focuses within that. Some biomedical is still more on the biology rather than the mechanical side of things, right? So I'm also taking two different minors apart from my major. Major in mechanical engineering, right? But I have a minor in psychology and in the grand challenges of engineering, which is just a program to encourage students to explore what are the biggest challenges of engineering and what do you want to tackle or work towards tackling as a student or in your career. So you have a lot of flexibility in what exactly you want to do. You can explore, to think that the lab I'm working in, it is a biomedical engineering. It is Department of Biomedical Engineering. As a mechanical engineering student, I'm totally allowed to enter there and work with it as long as I have the relevant skill set based on what the principal investigator of the lab thinks. So you have a lot of flexibility. And I like the fact that the US system really encourages you to understand the intersection between these fields, because that is what's most useful, right? Because you can have a ton of knowledge and not be able to apply it, and knowledge is completely useless. But if you know a lot of hands-on, you can do anything, but you don't have a lot of knowledge, theory in your head, that's also not that useful. You're not going to be the best at your job. So you've got to have both. You've got to know what's going on in your field, but you need to have a theoretical background. And I think nowadays people are really starting to see how different fields come together in weird ways. And so that's something that I think the American education system does well, and I'm trying to make use of it as much as I can.
During your application process, did you consider any other countries apart from the United States?
Well, yes, I did. The main thing was the main other country was Germany, because of course mechanical engineering, they are just one of the best, and zero tuition, which was pretty cool.
So Germany's zero tuition is if for the German taught courses in the public universities. Undergrad courses in Germany which are taught in English, which also are in public universities, are few and far in between. So even if you were to get into German public university,
you have to learn German.
And it would be taught in German.
It would,
so
that was a deterrent.
That would be a level of German which would be, understanding, doing a degree in a foreign country is one thing, but even if you ask someone who's educated in the English medium school to learn chemistry in a Hindi medium, that person will be at a much bigger disadvantage, because they're just not that comfortable with those languages in that context, right? Even if you may know German to converse and negotiate and have a good conversation with most Germans that you meet, you may not be at that stage where you could really learn mechanical engineering, or for that matter, anything else in German.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? I know there was, I think when I was looking at it, I could find like one university that had a course in English, a public university, I think. So it's rare. Well, my dad thought I could do it. I don't know if I was really too excited by the idea. But yeah, that was definitely a deterrent. But the thing is, the point is I never got to that point, because Germany's application process is later on. And by the time I got in I applied to 20 different universities in the US, which is more than I would recommend someone to apply to. But the thing is, at the end of it, I got my applications, got the scholarship awards that they were offering me. And I said, hey, I have some good options over here. Why bother going or trying something else? Like, since the US application process, like the early action, you're getting your decisions in like Jan, Feb. So I had already decided by the time I had to think about, do I want to apply to a backup in India? Do I want to apply to Germany or somewhere else in Europe? So that kind of settled it for me. And I also knew that in the US, you have opportunities for scholarship, unlike a lot of other countries where, at face value, the UK seems like, oh yeah, that's way cheaper. Look at the prices. Like the US, like $60,000 a year, and the UK is, I don't know, I'm not sure of the figure, maybe 30,000, 40,000 or something.
30,000 pounds or so.
Yeah,
so pounds. Maybe closer to $45,000, something like that.
Right. At face value, that's the cost. But then you don't factor into account that a lot of these UK universities, they have like 2 scholarships that they give out in a year. Right? You don't have, your chance of getting that is next to zero. But in the US, there's a lot more scholarships, and you still have to work hard to get to them. But if you do, you can reduce your cost of education by 90%, maybe more. That's one of the draws of the US. So when I got my scholarship admissions, I was like, okay, I guess I do have some good scholarship offers. It just made more sense. It would be cheaper than going to almost any other country, apart from India, of course, which would be a little bit cheaper. Overall, it was just a great opportunities. So I settled in the US.
I mean, it's a pretty good opportunity in terms of the scholarship and the university, the course that you exactly wanted, a good location as well. So where that is actually my something that I was going to bring up, which is how important do you think is for students to factor in something like location, because that is something where they're going to be spending 4 years of their undergraduate career. Was like in a city like the New Jersey Metroplex, you have got access to all kinds of opportunities versus University of Michigan Ann Arbor, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, highly ranked, engineering programs located in smaller college town areas. So, how do you see the location benefits, pros, cons playing out?
Well, I've kind of got to experience both. My university is very much in the middle of a city, but like even now, I'm staying very close to a university here in New Hampshire. That's kind of its own little college town. So I get to experience what's that's like. And in terms of that sort of atmosphere, I think that's just up to each person. If you want a more urban setting or a rural setting, I don't think that's the biggest factor. I think the location itself, where you are, if you have relatives nearby to you, that would help you, even though you may not be going every weekend. When you need something or you have some struggles, if you do have someone, that would really help out. I didn't actually have any relatives anywhere near the university that I was going to, but thank God that I was able to make some family connections eventually, like people through family connections, part of some families. And that has been something that has really helped me, especially as an international student. Like, you are going to feel like you're all alone sometimes. And just having just one family, maybe an hour and even an hour's drive away, it really makes a difference when you really feel like you need some help or something, some sort of advice. That's important. Another factor that I would say is, and this is really thinking ahead, but the location that your college is in, what part of the US, let's say we're talking about the US, because I think it'll be easier to say like that. The location of the US that you're in, if you know what sort of industries you're interested in, try to pick a location where that industry is big. So Jersey is pretty big for the biotech scene. Detroit, Michigan is big on automotive. And then you have, automobiles. You have there's the other parts of the US where if you're interested in aeronautica, go to, maybe if like an Embry-Riddle University or some place in an area where
big aviation.
Right, yeah. Florida is a pretty good place, or, whatever it is, because then when you're looking at your internships, it's a lot easier for you to apply to a company because, to get an internship, it's much easier if you go through the college. That helps a lot. Now, this is thinking ahead a little bit. You may not really know what industry you want to go into, but if you do, I would recommend try to go to a university where it's in a location, a part of the US, where that industry is pretty big. It will really help you. It may not help you for the first 2 years, but after your first 2 years are over, you're really into the internship season every summer, maybe during the year. That might really help you a lot. I would say that. But in terms of like climate and stuff like that, I think people kind of obsess about this a bit too much. You can adapt to anything. Like, I've seen like temperatures as low as like -9 Fahrenheit. I don't even know what that is. That must be like -28 or -30 or something Celsius. It's cold. It gets cold. You can deal with it.
I'm sorry.
I think it's cold. It's very cold, right? But, at the end of the day, I think you can deal with it because you're in America. This is not like, we're not talking about like India from 20 years ago when it's the summer and you have nothing but one little ceiling fan. Like, everything is climate controlled. I don't think like weather is the biggest factor. You can adapt to whatever it is. Think more about the industries, think more about people in the area, and just maybe you really like a rural campus, maybe you like an urban campus. That might be important to you too. But
with an undergraduate student, you still have that opportunity of spending 4 years at a place. So you can still expand your horizons, talk to people, figure out
absolutely
that kind of thing. With a grad student, that becomes a lot more important. But then you have the benefit of life experience. So perhaps there is someone who has already worked and they already know which industry they want to go in. Their location preferences perhaps should be, put into the factors of selection of universities a little bit more. But for undergrad students, you do have a bit more time to figure out who you are, to figure out who you will become 4 years from now. So you can, perhaps take location as a secondary qualification, as long as you are okay to understand that, as I looked up, -9 Fahrenheit is -23 degrees Celsius. It's something
Right.
you have climate control rooms. You have it only
Yeah.
for about three months of the year, so you can adapt to it.
Yeah, you
So,
can. Grad students, if you're listening, just keep in mind, I'm sharing from an undergraduate perspective, so it will be a little biased in that sense. Yeah.
Makes sense. So, like when you said about the fact that you will feel alone at some point, the fact that it will be good to have even that one family about an hour away. What aspects of American culture were just completely unexpected for you?
So it will be all very different for different people, right? How you experience a culture is dependent on a lot of factors, not just where you are. It's dependent on what your background is, what your expectations is. Have you traveled to the US before? Have you traveled abroad before? So I had the opportunity. I came to the US as a tourist, like about a decade ago, which was a while ago, right? I barely remember anything. And I had knew a lot of family who have like been to the US or lived in the US for a bit and told me all these things like, oh, expect this, expect that. And so all the big things I kind of expected. Some people might think the biggest culture shock is like going and seeing the roads and everyone is like, oh, driving so well. No, that was totally normal to me. It's just like, okay, you're driving the other side of the road. The road is like, people are driving fast. Okay, cool. And everyone is in order. Things like that. The point is the big things were not the culture shock to me. The culture shocks was stuff like, when people, not the surface culture, what people call the deep culture, right? Which is the attitudes that people have and how you deal with subtle things. Like in India, someone says, if someone invites you to go out somewhere and you're like, dude, I'm sorry, I can't make it. And they're like, why? What else are you doing? What is this? You can't make time for like this much thing. And that's like normal. No one really bats an eye when that happens. In the US, if you do that, like people will get mad at you because you're interfering in their personal space. Everyone has more of a sense of boundaries, right? Because, yes is yes, no is no. It's as simple as that. To us Indians, like, it's a little hard to comprehend at first. But it's really, really simple things like that takes getting used to. Big things like, oh, eating with a fork and like driving on the other side of the road and all these like the accents and all that. No, those are fine. No, those are not the things that will get you in the long run, I think.
Most adults in India by this time have seen enough Netflix shows to be not confused by a American accent or American shows, not just Netflix.
I know, right? Exactly.
I mean, 10 seasons of Friends may not prepare you for life, but it will prepare you for understanding an American accent. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Getting back to what you were saying, so for example, aspects of boundaries, like even physical boundaries, like how much of a distance to stand apart when you're ordering in a coffee shop, for instance, or the fact that you have a lot of good morning, good evening greetings and so on that perhaps are not as much there in a lot of what
very much. That's very
where there is a lot of a lot more civility, but not as much personal depth of interaction beyond certain, like the norms are there, but it takes a while to interpret what is above board, as you said. Like, for example, asking someone, perhaps if you're not that close to it's a recent friend, perhaps it's not the right idea to ask someone what they're doing with their time apart from doing whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like that you kind of learn when everyone kind of, no one, when you're going out to eat, everyone pays for themselves. Here in India, it's like one guy pays and then you rotate every week. If you're going with a group of 5 friends, one guy pays for everyone and the next guy pays for everyone. In the US, it's not like that. Everyone splits, everyone deals things themselves. Going to stores, you'll get the hang of it. It's different. Like Americans, if you're out at a restaurant, you're out at a store, and there's a sign that says something, and you ask the cashier, like, where's the restroom? There's a sign that says the restroom right there. They might throw you some attitude because that's a stupid question. It's some of these silly things that at the end of the day, you learn it, but no one will be able to tell you everything that you're going to experience. You will experience some slightly different things, culture, the people, like you said, like your uncle who's lived in the US 20 years and ask them, yeah. But don't think that just because you know people and you've been to the US before that you're not going to experience any culture shock. You will. But what you should do is when you go there, have a mindset saying, I'm going to observe what people are doing. Right? I'm gonna look out and see how people are interacting with each other, what sort of respectful like boundaries people seem to expect. How do people, when you're as simple as you're going to a restaurant with friends or something, don't go first. Let someone else go ahead of you, see how they deal with it, and then kind of replicate that. Learn from people around you, and you'll be fine. The first few weeks, especially, you're going to get into awkward situations. It's going to happen. Pick it up, take it in your stride, and keep moving, right? And you'll learn along the way. And within a year, you'll realize that suddenly these things are not so weird anymore. I think, one of the funny examples of that is it took a full year for me to get used to what people mean when they say football. It took me a year, and I knew exactly American football. I knew that from the start. But sometimes it just is hard to adapt to things. The silliest things like, the fact that when they say football, they mean the thing that you do not use your foot for. You throw it most of the time. You kick it like once. But you might take longer to adapt than you think. And that happens.
It's not even shaped like a ball.
Yeah, exactly. It still doesn't make sense. And some of my American friends will kill me for this. But, the point is sometimes it takes you a while to adapt to things. And that's fine. But just be conscious and give yourself a break. Don't be too hard on yourself saying, I should have learned everything. It's fine. Just take it in your stride and move forward.
I mean, my undergraduate career a lifetime ago in the US was basically a series of dumb questions that I continued to ask despite the amusement and sometimes embarrassment of my American classmates and so on. There are things that you will get used to. And it is observation is something that is really important. Don't try if we don't try to question it too much. If we try to keep an open mind, accept certain aspects of it, try to understand that football is not played with feet or balls, then you'll be fine. You'll get used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So how was it making friends? Did you have any difficulty making friends, or was it pretty easy?
So I'm an introvert, right? Typically, I don't know if I'll say I am or I was. I don't know. I think I still am. But the nice thing about college, and it might be a little different as a grad student, especially if you're coming in the second semester, but I had the benefit of coming in the fall where everyone else was coming in and, we're at orientation and no one knows anyone else. Well, that's actually not fully true. There's like groups of 3 or 4 people that might know each other, but they don't know anyone else, right? So it was a little crazy to think that, I'm all alone here. I don't know anyone. But then what I didn't realize is that almost everyone else in that room of like hundreds of people is in the exact same position. Everyone is there trying to make friends. Everyone is there trying to make new connections. So don't feel like you're going to be the awkward one. Everyone is going to be awkward because college is just that sort of time where you're uprooted and you're put in a new place of life. Maybe it's 100 miles from home, 20 miles from home, or 5,000 miles from home. Right? Everyone is in a new environment. We're all in the same boat. I think it's easier because of that in college, especially as a freshman coming in with everyone else to make friends. The first group of friends I made was friends in my dorm. Right, I first met my roommate who I'd never met before. Right, met him at orientation. Well, not even at orientation, just like the first day that we were all together on campus. And then from there, just met some other people in the dorm. That's the first group of friends I formed. Like, still a group of friends that I'm quite close to. But you'll make new friends as you go along, because especially in college, I think it's a lot easier to do than if you're traveling for work. And you're going into what is already an established community. Here, everyone is coming in, trying to make friends. Just join the crowd. Just be comfortable being awkward. It's going to happen. And there's going to be people who want to talk. You're not the only one there who wants to talk to someone else. Everyone else wants to make friends. So just put yourself out there. My first interaction with anyone, especially back then, it was never pretty. It was always really awkward. Right. Just put yourself out there, be willing to make a fool of yourself a little bit, and you'll be fine. You will make friends. And one of the things I will say, and it really depends on your university. I guess as a grad student, it is a little different. It will be different, but a lot of the friends that you end up making will be from the organizations that you join. Right. So I'm part of a couple of different organizations. Engineers Without Borders, it's a service-based engineering organization. InterVarsity Christian Fellowship is a faith-based Christian organization as well, and a couple of others, right? So the organizations that you attend, you're going to make some of your friends from there. So be deliberate when every university is going to have, a student organization fair, club fair or something. Go to places where you think you would feel at home, or maybe even places where you think would be really out of your comfort zone. That's even better if you have the courage to do that. And you will make friends from there. Just, if you meet twice a week with a group of people, you're going to become friends eventually, with some exceptions, but mostly that's true. Use these opportunities where you're going to be working together, group projects. What I love about the hard classes, pain in the butt. Like you have, no one wants to be struggling to get a B in a class, right? Something about hard classes just unites people, and you make some really lasting friendships. So, it's funny stuff like that. Sometimes you just need a reason to hang out together, and then you might form yourself a group of friends.
Actually, my session tomorrow is with a mechanical engineering graduate from the University of Florida who did his master's there. So one of the things that, we had a discussion about in a preliminary chat was, so he did his undergraduate education from India, and then he went to the US for his master's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what he ended up saying was something along the lines of, we all know how engineering is done in India, right? And how the culture of how engineering is taught, how engineering is learned, where at the end of the day, you're not producing highly skilled engineers who are highly employable from the very outset, right? I mean, I didn't really want to bring this up myself, but sure, I mean, I will bring it up, which is that a lot of my students end up having this thought that it's going to be easy. I have already learned this maths in India, I've already learned this chemistry in India. And then suddenly it gets really hard because you find the first semester easy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand the kind of work that goes into this class participation. There is research projects. There are various metrics that you're measured on, not just a big final exam at the very end, or sort of like being evaluated at various stages of the process. Each thing matters, right? And the amount of work that you have to put in just to, as you said, struggle for a B in a hard class is in contrast perhaps with this whole culture of where for the entire semester you're not doing anything, and then at the very end, 20 days or something, everyone is passing around that guy who always tops the class's notes, and somehow everyone's scraping through, right? So that culture, it's well represented in how engineering is taught and learned in India, versus I think the hardcore nature of engineering when you actually go to a high level engineering university in the United States. So what I'm trying to get at is a long winded way of saying that, do you have any insights on this? Do you have any thoughts on how engineering is taught in the US versus how engineering is taught in India?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question, because that's a lot of Indians feel like, Indian math, everyone, even in the US, everyone is like, oh, IITJ, I've heard of that exam. It must be like the hardest thing in the world. So like Indians will think, oh yeah, you come to the US, college is going to be super easy, right? And I will, to some extent, I want to be a little careful in saying this. To some extent, that is true. That the level of math that you might be coming in with is like the first math class that you take. In fact, the first year of math might be very easy. Like, honestly, the first math class, I came in with Calc 2. Because of IB, I had credit for Calc 1, which, honestly, I think I should have had credit for Calc 2. That's a different story. I came into Calc 2.
Can I interrupt? How many credits of IB did you end up getting overall?
Like the score on IB.
How many courses did you end up being able to skip?
Not as many as people who did AP. I will say that. The IB is European. It's a European schooling system, essentially. It's from France, Switzerland. So it's more tailored. in that sense, the US college system is more tailored to AP because that is a college board. It's an American thing. It's measured the classes. So I ended up getting credit for Calculus 1, Chemistry 1 and Chemistry 2 and the respective labs. And what else? Those are the main ones, honestly. There's not well, English I did not get credit for. Physics I did not get credit for, which I thought I should have. But it's, that is what it is.
So maybe 3 out of 3 or 4 classes.
Yeah, there were a lot of credits I got that are not relevant to me, like a lot of unapplied credits. I got credit for like algebra-based physics, which is, as an engineer, you're not even going to do that. You do calculus-based physics. And I got credit for Chem 2 lab and all these other classes that I didn't need. Essentially, those were like the main classes that I got credit for. Now, the thing is, yeah, right. So I came into Calc 2, and honestly, Calc 2 was really easy. Like a lot of other people were struggling in Calc 2, and I found it really easy. And I'm not the only one. I'm definitely not the smartest guy out there. Like there was a lot of other friends I know who were also like finding it very easy. But then within like just the next semester, I ended up in honors differential equations, right? And that class was not easy at all, right? That was a class that I had to pull an all-nighter in college, and it was not that fun. The first, not the only. But, things can get hard really quick because you might have one class now that's like, oh yeah, I did all of this. That is, by the end of 4 years, if you're an engineering or a STEM-related major, it is not possible for you at the end of 4 years to say, oh, everything I did in high school. Everything that I learned in college, I learned back in high school. It's not going to happen. It might be like that for a semester, for a year, but eventually things will get up. And if you spend the first year, as you said, just relaxing and being like, oh, I can just pass the exam without studying. When it gets to a really hard math class, what the system is trying to do is it's building you up towards that. So you got to put more and more effort each time. Eventually you'll hit a hard class. If you put zero effort and pass through those easy classes, you're going to have a huge jump to make when you get to the actually hard math class that you've never seen. Like you've got, complex variables or some sort of really, really difficult math class, whatever it is. It's going to be a big jump. Another thing that you mentioned, right, with the Indian system is, don't put effort for the first like 4 months of the semester. And then it's like, oh, exams are coming. So start studying, you write like 5 papers, get the notes from the smartest guy and go through. That will not fly. You are not going to get A's in your classes doing that. I know some people who have done that, and you're not going to get, like if you're aiming for a 4.0 GPA, which I think it's a good goal, not that you have to. But, you're not going to do as well as you might have. You're not going to get through everything because there's a lot of assignments that go along the way. It's not just one big exam at the end of the semester. Finals are important, yeah, but you have a ton of projects and you have a ton of assignments that happen and many exams usually during the semester. So this like back off and then back up last minute and suddenly like do well. It's just not going to fly. But at the end of the day, I do want to say this, that college is really as challenging as you make it. Because in the US, you have the flexibility, especially if, let's say you did IB or something, just for the sake of argument, or you did AP or something, and you come in with some credits, you now have a little more space in your major. You might be able to just breeze through college with 14 credit semesters every semester. And it's like, oh, this is so peaceful, I barely have any work. Or you could push yourself, do a double major, and actually increase your workload, join clubs, join organizations. And then suddenly it's going to be a lot harder because you might have a friend, same university, same major, and you have twice the workload that they do because they just choose not to spend their time working and doing, other things. So it really is a question of what you make of it. It is not possible for you to go to college with the mentality of, I'm going to make this as challenging as possible and then find it too easy. You can make it challenging. You can choose not to make it challenging. You can choose to just breeze through life and then you won't get much out of it. You'll spend tens of thousands of dollars over the course of 4 years and you will get very little value out of it. So I believe that if you're spending your money, you might as well make it worth it. Push yourself, make sure you do a lot. And sometimes it's not necessarily just the fact that your classes are hard. Even if you have 7, like last semester, I had 8 classes in total, which is a lot. Like if you're If you're in the US system, you know that like 5 classes is typically what students do. Right. So I had 8 classes. And even though none of them were really that difficult in the past semester, just the combination of them being part of 2 executive boards for class, being part of a research lab, and then working part-time on campus, that really gets you. Just the workload of it all kind of will pile up. So if you want to challenge yourself, you always can. If you don't want it to be easy, you're never going to find it too easy because there's always opportunities to do more. So like this mentality of, oh, the American system is just going to be too easy. It's so silly. It's like I have friends who have come to the US as international students and have made their college too easy and are just breezing through it and like doing whatever they feel like with their time. And I have other friends who are really pushing themselves and are making a lot out of the education that they and their parents have invested in. And you've got to choose. You can do it one way or another.
And these kind of things like the grand challenges minor that you have taken, the clubs that you're a part of, these kind of things do help with the internship searches. And because we know it's all about networking, right? A lot of people have the academic skill set, they have the technical, tools. So unless and until you are a technical maestro to the level where you are off the charts, basically a hundredth of a percentile point, most of us, you do need social skills, you do need those other aspects to really communicate. You really need to make sure that the person who is, trying to figure out whether this is the right fit in terms of coexistence, working together, those kind of things cannot be communicated completely by technical skills, right? So in your internship search, do you think, those social aspects did help played a part?
Oh yeah, networking is the name of the game, really. It's such an important thing. And I would even say, even if you are really all the way up there, let's say for the sake of argument, say you're at the same university and you're like 10 times smarter than me, right? And you're just at every class, the topper of everything and just the smartest guy out there. But how is a recruiter going to know that? You have a 4.0, I have a 4.0. We're not the same, right? How is a recruiter even going to know that if you haven't gone out there and put yourself in places where you've had these sort of out of your comfort zone crazy things, you've applied to fellowships, you've got, these, big scholarships or big events or things that you've done. Unless you go out there and you network with people and you communicate it effectively to people, all your skills are not going to get you anywhere. They'll be useful in the workplace, but to get you there, you need to network. You need to find connections. Professors are a fantastic connection. I made the mistake of that, of not using my professor's connections once, and I'm not making that mistake again. Because at the end of the day, it's just a question of trust, right? Because everyone has a resume. Lots of people have fantastic looking resumes. Lots of people have fantastic 4.0 GPAs, and like experiences in high school and stuff. But a lot of people also lie on their resumes, and that's a viable thing. Like, oh, how does a company know that you actually told the truth? They can interview you, but that's like a 1-hour conversation. How much is that really going to tell them? But if they have someone else who they know, who they trust, who can vouch for you, that is like 10 times more important. That's what networking is all about, right? If you're getting people who will be like points of verification for you, right? Who will put in a good word because they are trusted by companies and they trust you. So by extension, you have that as a pathway into some of these companies. So networking is a very, very big deal. And at the beginning of my internship search, I felt like I was cheating a little bit if I was using connections to try and, get interviews and things like that. And sometimes you might feel like that. I'm sure I know a lot of people do feel like, oh, it's kind of cheating because I'm not really using merit-based. But think of it that way. It's not nepotism. What it is a game of trust. It's someone else is trusted and they trust you. By extension, you can get a foot in the door like that. It's something that you need, because to get merit-based, you can do it merit-based. It's possible. It is unreasonably difficult, I would say, to just go based on merit. So you definitely need to get some connections. I use my connections to try and get an internship in this place. I'm not going to regret it. Like next year as well, when I'm looking for internships again, I'm going to make sure that I do a better job than I did this past year, because I know, like, looking back, reflecting on it, I could have utilized my connections a lot more. I was a little too afraid. Sometimes I just sent in the online application to a lot of companies and never heard back because I had no connection there, and I didn't use some of these perfectly good connections like professors and who and all around me who could have been great points of contact to introduce me to companies or maybe even help me land an offer. But and as in especially speaking to international students, when it comes to internships, right, you do have it harder than the people who are from there by a lot. Not only because you probably don't have that many connections compared to people who have been in the US all their life, but also it's just it's different for different fields. But there are different seasons, and this, like, for example, the past summer seems to have been more of a defense hiring season, where a lot of people were landing internships. Engineers, especially mechanical and electrical engineers, are landing internships with defense-related contractors. Right? And as an international student, you're completely disqualified from that. A company that has a defense contract will never hire an international student. It's a government regulation. They don't even have a choice. So you can be at a disadvantage. Don't get too discouraged when you see people around you landing internships left, right, and center, and you may not have one. It's kind of a balance in there. So I would say, keep applying. I had to apply to I applied to 20, easily 20 plus companies to get an internship. And essentially I got one. Got a few interviews, like 2 or 3 interviews, something like that. And got one offer. Right. So it's like, it can be tough. And it's a lot of rejections. But honestly, now I'm really enjoying it. So I have no real complaints.
Can you talk about a little bit about what you do and the internship and the company?
Sure, yeah. So I work now as an automation intern for a manufacturing company called TurboCam International. So they're a multinational manufacturing. They're an automotive, aerospace, and space and rocketry. They do contracts for, they actually have, just an example, every Artemis mission has parts made by this company, NASA's Artemis mission. Right, so they do that sort of stuff, but I'm working with them as helping them automate the CNC machining process using robots, designing enclosures, designs fixtures so that robots can automate the machining, speed up the process and reduce issues with people, having really menial or backbreaking labor sort of work at the company. And yeah. So it's a lot of design, some programming, and things like that. And it's a job that I think I really enjoy. It challenges me and has really helped me understand manufacturability and design in that sense. And it's a cool experience also, just working, living by yourself. It gives you you're not thrust into it like you are when you have to go into life by yourself, living abroad, and you get a chance to kind of experience it for just a short time and then go back to college. And then I feel like I have a sort of window into life after college as it is. Right? Now I realize that, hey, this is actually a pretty cool scene. And if I work at a company like this, I guess automation is probably a very engaging and unique sort of job. Sometimes I'm also noticing, hey, there are these other jobs that other engineers at the company do that, oh, that doesn't seem that interesting. Or maybe you even find out that the job you're doing, okay, it was fun for 2 weeks, but then it got really boring real quick. So then now okay, cool. So maybe this isn't the industry for me. Maybe I should kind of switch gears a little bit, and maybe I'll keep my major, maybe I'll change my major. But even if I keep, maybe transition towards this other type of role, because now I know. So it's a great learning experience. I think everyone should try. I would actually go that far to say everyone should try to get an internship. Maybe as early as your first year is tough, but second year onwards, try in the summer. Just don't use the summer as just an extended 3-month vacation. I don't think that's the point of it. You don't need 3 months after a semester to just laze around. Just do something with your time. And an internship is a great thing to do.
Absolutely. So you would have had to apply for the curricular practical training and the clearances and so on from the university. So how helpful or how seamless was the process of CPT and the application process of that?
Honestly, everyone's experience will differ. My experience personally was not that seamless. I'll be quite frank with you.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little last minute, and things kind of were a little confusing, but it worked out. It worked out, and praise God for that. Some people might really have a simple, seamless experience getting the approvals and everything. It took a bit of time, and there was a little bit of confusion along the way, and I didn't really know what the process was. So which is actually and I don't fully blame myself, but I definitely take a chunk of the blame in that I didn't understand the entire CPT regulations. Like, I had talked to one of the advisors, and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out later." So, I realized what I should have done is gone and understood the regulations beforehand, because then, just as an example, I ended up having to, there's things like one of the regulations that actually was a pain for me. Just an example is that when doing CPT, you have to be enrolled for classes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be enrolled as a student technically, which means the college had to enroll me for a class that is a summer class. And summer classes for international students are not cheap. They are 3 times or more, 3 or 4 times the cost that a normal student would pay. And I don't get, at least my scholarship does not count for summer. So I had to pay that out of pocket, which it balanced out by the pay that I'm getting from the internship a little bit. But, I wish in hindsight that I had looked up these things. And I would say, like, recommendations for people who might be going through the process of having to get CPT for an internship: start early, make sure you look up and research things, do your due diligence to make sure you look up these things, understand the regulations beforehand, so that when, the college get back to you and says something off, it's not a complete surprise to you, that you know what's going to come, and that you can, ask them and confirm things beforehand, so that you don't end up too stuck in the last minute.
But this aspect of, again, American culture, where I don't want to call it, spoon feeding is a bit of a negative term that we have it in India, right? But that is sort of what we are looking at, where a set of companies is all coming, and your professors are making you sit, for placement. Like, you have the option to sit for maybe 10 companies, 15 companies. And the moment you get an offer, you basically can't sit for other companies' placement, essentially, right? It is very regimented, and a lot of push is there towards, like, do this, or even for that matter, when it comes to attendance or going to classes and so on and so forth. This whole idea of that someone will push me to do something, like someone will maybe it's not the parental figure per se, but this whole authority figure will tell me this is what I have to do. While a lot of American culture, and especially, a lot of other countries abroad as well, is figure it out. You're an adult, you're, technically 18 plus at this point. You have to go, like, you have resources. If you're having mental health issues, there is a free, mental health counseling center. Universities have that. If you're struggling with, like, what kind of resume, how my resume is 13 pages long, how do I get it to 1 page? There is a resource for that. You go to the career center, and, there is someone who's paid by the university. You can book an appointment, and they will sit down with you, work with you for those kind of things. But it is not like these resources will be pushed towards you. You have to go out and seek them, and only then will you find them. So that is a switch that students have to make. That is a piece of advice that I usually give my students before they depart. Is like, no one is going to give you anything. No one is going to push you towards anything. You have to go and find what you want, figure out your needs, and try to see how they can be met. If there is a desire for an internship, you need a resume. If your resume is not getting selected, if there's something wrong with that, go to the career center. There will be a resource which will help you maybe improve that, refine it, add some keywords, that kind of thing. If it is that you need mock interview preparation, there is sometimes that as well, right? So the availability of resources in US universities is quite high, but trying to get students to use even something as simple as, fitness center, right? You're paying for it essentially, right? You're paying for all the resources that are there on campus. But a lot of times international students don't end up, going out and making the best use of those things.
We're way too used to spoon feeding. And that is an issue that's not just true of, we're talking about career search now, internship search. In fact, I would go as far as to say the biggest challenge for especially Indian international students coming to the US is we struggle to understand this. There is, no matter what university you go to, like any major university that you go to, community college even, there is no shortage of resources. But no one, under any circumstances, will take initiative for you. No one. You have to take all the initiative. And that's something that we really have to get into our heads, especially as Indians, where you're used to parents and teachers and this. And you think that someone else will tell you, so no one is indebted. They don't feel, in American culture, no one is indebted to tell you about everything, all the opportunities that are in front of you. You're expected to just go there and find out about them. And this is one of the things that I will say, especially as practical advice for international students. It's like, yeah, that is different. That is very different. And I don't expect any other international student to come in here and just snap, and then suddenly you're like, the biggest initiative taker in the world. Having friends who have grown up in that culture and who are driven, that really helped me. Like having friends in the honors college, for example, who are used to this. They've grown up in that culture, right? Where you've got all these opportunities, you have to take initiative to use them. But at the same time, you also do have to take your research, because you don't want to be constantly following behind like what everyone else is doing. You will be always late to the party, right? So you've got to just learn it. Eventually, you'll get the hang of, hey, okay, there are these resources, and you've just got to go and utilize the resources, because every university will have a career development services, whatever they might call it. Right. So a lot of students might be sitting about and thinking, how do I apply to internships? How do I do this? There's an entire department that gets paid to tell you how to apply to internships, how to build your resume, how to network with employers. They get paid to do that. But especially if you don't read your every single email, and even if you do, you may not even know that they exist, because not every opportunity is going to come to your doorstep. So you do have to step out of your comfort zone. You have to go and search for things. But when you do, you'll find that there's always plenty of opportunities. So yeah, like the career development services was really helpful to me, because they helped. There's a lot of resources they had. They even had this fantastic resume builder that I used to make my resume, which has like an AI tool and all sorts of cool stuff. I wouldn't have even known that existed if I hadn't gone and talked to a career development service advisor and said, hey, I want to apply to internships. This is what I'm interested in. What steps do you recommend I take? And then I got a lot of really useful feedback from that. So you have to go out there and tell people, and because I believe there's always going to be people out there who will come alongside you and help you progress forward. There's going to be people like that, but none of them in the US, especially in a country like that, none of them are just going to show up and out of nowhere just help you out. You've got to go out there and find people, and there's people whose entire jobs, they are paid to help students do specific things, right? But you have to go and find those resources, and once you do, you can make use of them, and then you'll be very happy that you took that step out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely. When you were looking for internships, were you looking at anything beyond like what your core interest was?
Oh yeah, very much. I applied to automotive companies. I applied to aeronautical less, because a lot of them government regulation, you can't have internationals. I applied to some biomedical companies, and I ended up in a manufacturing company, right? They're not doing anything biomedical related. It's just good career experience, something good for my resume, and working with CAD and simulation and stuff that, will be useful whatever career field. So it's not like, I think especially with internships, I was very open. I was like, I'll do whatever. Anything is good experience, essentially, as long as, and even if you were spending your whole day organizing a chest of drawers or something, you might learn something from that. It's better, at least you get paid. It's something, right? So I would say that don't be too picky about your internships, but apply to places where you feel like you have a good rationale that you can actually market yourself when you get to the interview stage, or when you're sending in your application, that it's relevant. If you're a mechanical engineering major, you want to apply to a surgical internship, like what are you going to do over there? but apply to relevant stuff, but keep it a little broad. Don't try to be too narrow, especially in your earlier years of college.
So when it comes to like the internship experience, how much what's the duration and how much is left?
It's 12 weeks long, and I'm done with 8 weeks now, so it's like the last little bit.
Okay. So one of the things that you spoke earlier about, which I'm quite interested in, and is part of the resources that people have at their disposal that people don't end up thinking of resources as much. Like when you are in a workplace, there are other engineers, there are accountants, there are finance people, there are marketing people. And even when you are in an internship, you have a chance to ask them, okay, what do you do in a day? What does your day look like? Or what is your job? Those kind of interactions is also something that students don't end up seeing, I feel like underutilizing a little bit, because they think of it as, okay, this person is not doing what I want to do. So this is not my area of interest per se. But even eliminating things that you don't want to do, or trying to figure out that, okay, this might be a niche aspect which I might be slightly interested in the future, is a way of, exploring and trying to figure out what you could do with your career.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, even eliminating is important. Like if you look around, and sometimes, as a company, you'll see a lot of other roles. You'll see people working their jobs, and some of them might seem interesting. Some of them might just not seem interesting at all. Like you might see some other group of engineers in the company might be doing some tasks like that seems kind of repetitive and boring. I'm thankful that the job that I'm doing, the role that I have, I do really enjoy it. And the biggest learning I would say is, about the design process, because I'm doing a lot of design work. It's a lot of CAD and prototyping, getting designs ready. A lot is to do with the design process, how people use intuition, how like you get a prototype out there and there's a lot of iteration that goes on. Then, along the way, towards the end, sometimes new ideas pop up and you end up going back to the start. You go back to the drawing board sometimes and you have to redesign like half the thing you've even made. And then sometimes you get to the end and you're like, this thing that I did it at first and then I removed it, that was actually a good idea. So you go back to that, you add back things that that sort of thing about the whole design process. That's something that's common to basically every field, no matter how complex or how simple, how big or small the design is. There's always that element of the design process, iteration, prototyping, design for manufacturability. Those are things that I feel like I'm really learning in this internship, and especially designing projects that will actually contribute to the company. It's really cool, honestly, knowing that the work that you're doing is having a real impact in some way, improving productivity or efficiency of the company in some meaningful way. I really enjoy that. I'm realizing that I'm more so a goal-oriented person. I'm not someone who just enjoys doing a bunch of tasks. If you just give me a bunch of tasks, be like, do the A, B, C, D, I get bored of it. But if you tell me, hey, here's your goal, this is your objective that you're trying to reach, right? And here are the tasks that'll help you get to that. And if I can connect them, suddenly I'm a lot more invested, I'm a lot more driven. So, I'm discovering more about myself as I am discovering about my career and about the company. So it's a very transformative thing. It's a very good experience. And I think no matter what internship you do, you will learn more about the company, you will learn more about yourself, and you'll learn more about the industry. So there's nothing to lose really.
So mechanical engineering is perhaps what you can call one of the core engineering fields, along with civil engineering, electrical engineering. Perhaps not so much chemical engineering, but if we consider mechanical engineering, civil engineering, and electrical engineering as the core, whatever you want to call it. And now you've got the advent of computing, right? Computer science, which is engineering, not engineering, whatever, right?
Yeah, so different.
But yeah, I mean, exactly that is something that is a bit of a I don't want to address that too much, because we could talk for another 30 minutes of whether computer science is engineering or not. But my question was going to be that now, over the past decade, 20 years, since the advent of the internet, you have got a lot of people who study core engineering, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and then they move on towards something which is not exactly related to what they end up doing in their undergrad. So as someone, you have had the advantage of, coming from an IB background where you can take any combination up to a point of subjects that you think will, help you in your high school career. And that gives you a bit of a more of an organic interest. You're not pushed into engineering essentially. You chose engineering for yourself, mechanical engineering, versus let's say an ecosystem around pushing people towards engineering and, to a lesser extent, medicine. Again, another minefield I don't want to step into at the moment. But basically, let us say, where do you see, the role of like mechanical engineering and these core engineering fields, which in the future, especially when everything is becoming a lot more like a lot of people end up doing something completely different with their degrees after?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? To some extent, like, who knows what you're going to be doing after you get into the workplace another like 15 years down the line. But
I studied biology, so I'm helping guide students, perhaps make better decisions than I did.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the goal is to do something that'll be relevant to what you want to work in, right? That may not always be the case, and I think in India, especially, like we have this big, there's a big push for engineering. There's a big push for medicine. Like those two fields, it's like you doctor and engineer, one of the two. You don't have an option, And as someone who I do have a genuine interest in mechanical engineering, I can get caught in the dilemma that, a lot of people might think that, oh, I'm just doing this because, yeah, it's the easiest path of least resistance with Indian families. Just to be an engineer and get done with it. You do have to ask yourself, what do you genuinely have a passion for? And the reason I thought mechanical engineering in the first place is it was between, believe it or not, it was between that and product design. That was the other thing, which is like now that I have a lot of friends who are in product design, industrial design, these sort of majors. It's a very different major from mechanical engineering. But that's the perspective that I have. I want to design things. I want to make stuff. And I realized I love math and physics. Not everyone does. And that's totally okay. But I personally love math and physics. I love doing calculations, the theoretical underpinnings behind design. And I'm finding that mechanical engineering offers exactly that because it's designed with a focus on real-world calculations, theoretical math and physics. And that's why I picked mechanical engineering, not because, my parents said, "Oh, you did well in math, now is engineering time." You've got to make a choice. You've got to make sure that what you're doing is actually something that you genuinely enjoy. Because I know people who are, doing STEM majors just because they think that's the path that will give them the most money. And to that I say, you are probably not even going to enjoy the next 4 years. You're gonna drag through 4 years of your life, and who knows what you'll do after it. You might just have to switch direction anyway because you don't enjoy the work that you're doing 40 hours a week. Right.
Your sources of external motivation are going to run out at some point.
Exactly.
You have to have that internal motivation to keep you going.
Exactly. And that's the thing. As much as there are a lot of people who I know are forced into engineering or forced into medicine just because of external factors, there are also people who genuinely enjoy this sort of thing. And so if you're one of those people who feel forced into this, it's not too late to change. It's not too late to, consider different options because, you want to be doing. The reason I see college even as being important is not so that I can earn more money. The point is not that, that I can make a bigger salary. The point to me is that if I do well in college and if I do well in this major, I get the opportunity to do what I genuinely love for a living. And I'm not going to be forced by external factors like the amount of money to be forced into something that I genuinely don't enjoy doing. That's the reason. Because if I go through college, if I get, good qualifications, I can start at a job as an engineer, a core technical job that might be paying. And I may not have to jump into more of a corporate type of role, maybe finance or, even a sort of non-technical management, which I think I would not enjoy. But that's why I see college as important. So it's like, think about what you genuinely enjoy doing and make sure that you are on track to pursue that. Because if it's just money or if it's just what your parents want you to do, you're not going to go very far for that. You're talking about the next 40 years of your working life, maybe not, 30 years at least of your working life. It's a big deal. Don't treat it as I'll do it just because someone told me to.
Yeah, I mean, as I was mentioning, my guest tomorrow, he is running an AI in recruitment startup after studying
Oh,
mechanical engineering.
huh.
So huge lateral shift,
Mhm.
but his journey came about because his experiences applying for internships and jobs and so on in the US was so, like, he felt that there were so many things that needed to be optimized from that space that he just went on a completely different track after a point, and now he's ended up doing something completely different from his education. So the you never know what is going to happen. Like, he has found his calling. Like, and that internal motivation is important no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to make sure that you're doing what you love. As it sounds cliche, especially to us Indians, like this is a normal concept, I guess, and abroad, but it's like it does matter. You're spending the majority of your life doing this. It should be something that is not going to drain on your energy all day, so that you come back and you can have time to spend with your family and your friends and whatnot. You want to do something that you genuinely enjoy. Money is only a motivator until a certain point.
What if there's someone who has no idea what they want to do?
Well, it sounds like the American education system is for you. Well, it depends. It really depends. But I will say that, like,
you have
uh,
undeclared majors as well.
you do have undeclared majors. I have a friend who came in as a general engineering major, which is like, if you're an engineer, you know that what some of the engineering majors do has like nothing. What I do and what like chemical engineers do, we both have math, we both have physics and something in between, but the work we do is like completely different, right? I could never, I don't even want to venture into that space, and they probably couldn't even like, they wouldn't even enjoy coming to the mechanical space. But he's now like he's now settled on like electrical engineering and it's doing really well. So you can come in as even something more general than that, like a general undecided major, and kind of find out as you go. But I feel like a lot of people, to a certain extent, I feel like a lot of people have this issue of I have no idea what I'm interested in. And if you're still in high school, you have the chance to change that. It's not that crazy to find out what actually you enjoy. Like what do you want to do with your free time apart from hang out with friends? If you had a choice, just try new things. Eventually you'll find something that you enjoy doing. It might be art, it might be painting. And if not, even if you think, oh, maybe that's not a good career, try design. Design is very similar to that. You're doing a lot of digital paint work essentially in your design majors. There's so many things, even if you don't understand, because I feel like a lot of students, they do math, physics, chemistry in school, and they don't like any of them. They're like, I guess I don't have any interest in life. But everyone has some interest or the other. It's just, it might be a little harder to find it, but trying to find something, a starting point.
You have to keep exposing yourself to different experiences, different subjects, different skills. And like you said, like if even if you may not be the best, you can definitely be better than what you started out as. But you were talking about your writing course at that point. But
Exactly.
even if you may not be the best writer in your class, but whatever your starting point is, you can substantially improve on that with the experience and with the right mindset and with the specific application of that skill set in certain contexts, right? I'm just going to go with a personal example, which is that I don't really like working out. Okay, I cannot say that I do enjoy it per se. The only workout I enjoy is boxing, and that I do
That is a
very rarely
workout.
because of that is a workout. Like, yeah, boxing is fun. I would do it for fun essentially, right? But obviously, I'm not going to be a personal trainer. What I'm trying to say is that aspect of, like, getting improvement in that skill has, it has its own satisfaction. And high school is, of course, a great time. Even university, for that matter, is a great time to, experiment with those kind of things. But trying to figure out how you want to spend, 8 to 9 hours of your working day, right? That you do have to keep exposing yourself to different things. And even if the answer is no, that is a valid answer. You have just closed a path for yourself and made narrowed the number of options,
right.
and made it easier for yourself to decide. So
Yeah.
that is, even if you don't know where to start, you just start somewhere. Do something. If it's the wrong thing, do something else. eventually you will find something.
Right, that's absolutely true. And one thing I do want to say is that I feel like, while what I did say, I would kind of stand by it, that, like, expose yourself, find new things. It's not like you have to have some interest, I'm sure. But at the same time, I feel like there's also this group of a lot of students who feel really pressured by everyone telling them, find what you love, find your passion, find this one good thing, this one thing that you're really good at and that you are just amazing and you love. And maybe you feel like, I haven't found that thing, and I have to find this like one perfect thing that is like, if I start doing it, I like elevate and like life is amazing. And this sort of romanticized idea of my true passion and life,
true calling,
right? But at the end of the day, you don't need to feel that way, because see, there's nature and then there's nurture. At a certain point, you can actively decide what you enjoy. It's a balance of both. There are things that you naturally are inclined to, but you don't have to find this one true thing. It's that truthfully, I cannot say that if I were to not be a mechanical engineer, that I would hate everything I'm doing. That's not true. I think if I had just tweaked what interests I did in childhood, if I'd spent more time, drawing, if I had spent more time with Photoshop and Illustrator, which I had an interest for when I was younger, I could feasibly be a graphic design major. I think I would enjoy what I do. I think that's true. And graphic design and mechanical engineering are very, very separate fields. Let me make that clear, right? But the point is that you can decide what you enjoy to a certain point. So it's not like if there is this perfect ideal out there of like this one thing that I am the best at and the only thing that I should do. But you can try things, and you can, even if you don't enjoy something to start off with, you can just work at it, and maybe you will start liking it. Maybe you won't, but there are definitely things that you can try out, and maybe you'll learn to love it as you go through it, right? Don't pick something that you hate from the outset, but pick something maybe you feel neutral towards it. Maybe there's this field like, you like hanging out with friends. Okay, let's try a field that involves a lot of customer interaction. Let's say, okay, maybe you can get into sales. That's a viable option. Try it. And even if you didn't enjoy it in the first 2 weeks, because it's very stressful, maybe like 2 months in, you might, into your major or whatever, the work that you're doing, you might find that, hey, actually, I think it's growing on me a little bit. So you can influence what you enjoy. It's not just, you have to find it. You can create it. You can create what you really enjoy. So don't feel so pressured about, I have to find this book. Yeah, we're humans. We have a choice.
Absolutely. But I think, if there were, if we talk about a little bit about concrete pieces of advice that you have received, and I'm not saying people do this because of any nefarious intent. Sometimes it's just not the right person. It's not the right time. The advice has gone, past its expiry date, if you will. So are there any pieces of like bad advice or misguided advice that you have received, and if you'd be comfortable sharing that?
Well, I think kind of thinking back to the college admissions process, I felt like some good advice and some bad advice here and there. I think one of the pieces of bad advice, and it's a line, right? Some of this is like, I think with some of these pieces of bad advice, it's like it's good 80%, but then it crossed a line somewhere, and it's like, okay, this is a little bit excessive. And I think like when I was applying to college, like I applied to 20 different universities, and I had some people who were just telling me, you got to just apply to more, spend more money, spend more time, spend more resources. And there was a limit. Like, of course, if you plan to apply to 3 colleges, that person who says do more, it's a good voice. Like, that's a good advice to have. But I was just at this point where I was, struggling to get quality admissions out there, like applications out there, because of all the supplemental essays and everything. And I was like, it would have really been a detriment to me if I had pushed myself to do more. Quality would have gone down. Eventually, quantity takes over quality, right? And so that was one of the pieces of advice that was not helpful to me at that time in the position that I was, that I'm sure if I could have applied to 25, 30 colleges, but I think I would have got less admissions. I would have got less offers because the quality of my applications would go down. That's just one example.
Not such a big scholarship.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Maybe even if I got admission, maybe I wouldn't have got the same scholarship. There's stuff like that. I think there's even in college, sometimes you get advice from people, maybe professors, maybe friends, maybe family that is, a little distracting. Can, especially when you have when you're trying to take advice from four different people, you might have your parents, and then you have your advisor, and then you'll have a academic advisor on top of that, and you'll have your friends, and you've got a balance between them. You'll always come into, at some point or the other in your life, you'll come into situations where these different advisors are in conflict. And then you've got to make a decision. I think it's just a question of once you start to get more comfortable in independently taking decisions, or at least being able to take information from different people and not just do what you're told, because do what you're told works. Now you're an adult. Eventually it's you've got to make your own decisions. So you can, people can give you bad advice, but that should not be a reason to make a bad decision, because you make the decision at the end of the day, right? In college, you're going to find tons of examples of this. Everyone makes mistakes. You might even be the friend who is encouraging someone else to do something silly with their time. You just got to learn to make your own decisions. These sort of things are a regular part of life, and it just helps you be more decisive.
You might be that hypothetical international student who's sailing through his classes, 4 classes a semester without, exerting themselves overly. In which case, you have more free time for sure. Overall, we've covered a lot of ground, but what would be your starting comments for people who are trying to figure out what they want to do, trying to figure out which universities to apply to? Any one sort of insight that you would like to offer at the very end?
I think, especially as a international student, right? Push yourself outside your comfort zone. And don't feel awkward about it, because it's part of life. College is the perfect time for you to try new stuff and fail. It's the perfect time to fail, actually, because when you're later in life, you're going to have much higher consequences when you fail. You fail at your workplace, you get fired, you've lost your income, your family or whatever will suffer. But in college, you fail a class, you can repeat a class. You'll have to pay extra money to do an extra semester or whatever. But, the consequence of failure is low. So try new things, push yourself outside your comfort zone. And if you're earlier in the process, you're just about getting into your applications, at a certain point, it's not everything is in your control. The college admissions process is a bit of a black box, right? You don't know. You just send in things into the void and you get an answer. And you're like, okay, cool, I got it or not. Just give it your best shot. Make sure when you look back at your applications, you can truthfully say that, hey, I think this is the best I can do. I think this is reasonable given the circumstances, that I think this is the best I'm capable of. And then if you're willing to say yes to that, submit it. Don't just make sure to try. Don't, I made this mistake too often of being too afraid of failure that I didn't want to try. Right? And I think we've all been there. And be careful of that, because that will do a lot more damage to you than failure itself will. So just push yourself, go outside your comfort zone. And I'm sure all of you, whoever you are, wherever you're listening, you can do amazing things. I know. So, there's a lot of great opportunities out there. You will find them. And when you come across great things, go for it. Just try it. There's no harm.
There should be no regret of not having tried.
Exactly. That's much better to have tried and failed than to regret not having tried. You don't want to be in that position, exactly as you said, Yash.
Well, Anmol, I don't think it is an exaggeration where I can say that this has been my favorite recording thus far. Not that many, I will admit, but it has been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for your time. And I really hope that students or people who are at various stages of their application process, students will get something out of this. So yeah, I hope this was a good experience for you as well. And I genuinely hope that at some point of time we can repeat this, maybe at a different stage of your career.
Yeah, perhaps. And yeah, thank you so much, Yash, for having me. It's, of course, such a pleasure. And yeah, I've, been impacted by a lot of the stuff that you did before. So I'm glad I get to come back and with this opportunity, maybe help someone else who's a little confused in the application process or starting out college. Everyone's at a different point, but I'm glad. And of course, thank you for your time as well. And It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.